Raise your hand if you think that we should be called Podcast Schmodcast.
Raise your hand if you think they're wrong.
Let's
Outnumbered
see.
again.
2-1. 2-1. Welcome to Podcast Schmodcast. Welcome back to Followers by Design. Name pending. We might be Podcast Schmodcast soon. We'll see.
No. Raise your hand if you're gonna ban Michael from the comments and podcast Schmodcast from the comments.
That's too real, man.
Hey!
That's too real. That's too real.
Take the L.
Anywho, welcome back. If this is your first time, welcome for the first time.
Yeah.
We are here with Ashleigh. This is my sister. She's pretty cool. She was on here a few months ago.
Yeah.
And she talked about mental health as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Fun fact, she was one of our first guests.
That's right.
Not the first one, but one of the first.
One of the first.
Yeah.
One of the OGs. And if you haven't seen that video, Mental Health with Ashleigh, I highly advise you watch that. She gives a great foundation for mental health, a Christian perspective with logic and science all wrapped into it, how to deal with that practically, and how to help others who are struggling with that. Now, today, you're going to talk more about anxiety specifically.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about what it is and then the difference between healthy anxiety and then when it could be a clinical disorder or when you should get it checked out.
Yeah.
And then I'm also going to go into if you have anxiety or if you think you have anxiety, how you can approach that. And if you're a friend of someone who does, how you can be supportive.
And you went to school for this.
I did. So
you are certified.
I am certified.
Yeah.
Yes.
Official.
I studied psychology in undergrad, and then for grad school, I have a counseling degree and studied all of the different disorders. So I have kind of a general knowledge of them, and I'm passionate about it. I think it's interesting, and I just want to use my knowledge to help people as much as I can.
And here you are.
And here I am.
Yeah. Also, if you have a specific topic when it comes to mental health that you want to see us talk about with Ashleigh, that you want to see that topic of mental health related to our daily Christian lives and how we should approach it, please let us know in the comments, because we'll have Ashleigh as many times as we need to be able to go over those topics, and we might have another person as well. So keep tuned for that.
We'll see. We only have the highest quality of guests.
Yes.
So we're giving you that. But let's get right into it. Anxiety. Normal, not normal, bad, good. What are we talking about here?
So anxiety in general is actually supposed to be a good thing.
Yeah.
Which is probably surprising because most of us don't have great experiences with it. Even if you don't have an actual problem with it, anxiety never feels good. It just doesn't. But it is supposed to be healthy, and it's supposed to help, or it's supposed to protect you from things. So if you've seen Inside Out 2, the character anxiety tells all the other emotions that her job is to protect Riley, who's the main character, of things that she cannot see. And that is true. I thought that was a really good way to put it, actually.
Yeah, it's really good. Also, I highly encourage people to go watch that movie. It's a great way. The designers, the directors, the animation team actually did an amazing job of portraying anxiety and portraying it in a way of not as a villain, because this is a little bit of spoilers, but they go over that anxiety. The way they portray it at the beginning of the movie is that she's just trying to do the best for Riley, and she wants the best for her, and it just goes into a protective mode in a good way, but then it'll slowly builds up to the point when, as soon as anxiety finishes building the new Riley, her new sense of self, and as soon as she hears, "I'm not good enough," you see the change in anxiety's face to the point where it's I thought I was making this better, but I'm not.
Exactly. So the role of anxiety in our life is, again, supposed to be good. There are ways, though, that you can tell if anxiety is healthy in a normal part of your life and then when it's not. And so I'm going to get into that. Most people have situations or things that make them anxious. That is normal.
Would you say anxiety is related to excitement?
It can be.
Like the healthy version of anxiety would be essentially excitement?
I think so. I mean, actually, you know what? I read something, I don't know where it was from, but I was just reading like some general strategies about anxiety. And yes, the physical I guess effects of anxiety and excitement are often the same. And so one little mind shift that you can do is if you're anxious about something, but you're not panicking, so it's not you're not like in a terrible place, you're just a little bit anxious, you can reframe that and say, I'm excited. And you can kind of trick your brain into thinking, there's nothing I'm afraid of. I am excited.
Yeah, because I think that happens for me when it comes to running.
Yeah.
Like when I have a race, a half marathon or a marathon, like the night before, it's hard for me to go to sleep because I'm really excited about, like a little bit anxious and excited together. So it's like, I would say is that kind of like good balance of anxiety.
I think it is. I mean, if it's to the point where you can't sleep at all.
I do sleep. It's just it's harder for me to get to sleep because I'm like excited, like have energy for it.
And you know what? A lot of athletes or performers will have kind of that excitement and anxiety, and I actually do think it's good because it shows that you care.
Yeah.
You're focused on it. And I mean, you want to be excited about things that you care about. So I think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
If it's the type of thing where leading up to the event, more days than not, you are dreading it. With anxiety and excitement, again, a lot of the physical aspects are the same, but with anxiety, it can be negative, right? So you're dreading it. You're thinking about all these worst case scenarios. So like if you leading up to the race are thinking, okay, I'm going to come in last, or I'm going to get hurt, or whatever those thoughts are.
Yeah.
And that's what you're focusing on, that's not a good thing. But if you're just excited and a little bit anxious thrown in, that's fine. I would say that's pretty normal. And I would actually say that probably a lot of athletes feel that way, just in general.
Because it also shows that you care.
It does,
right?
yes.
If you feel nothing, then
it's like,
that's also another warning sign.
Right. And not that you have to feel anxious to care about something, but a little bit of it, it does show that you care.
Yeah.
You want to do well, or you want it done right, something like that.
Yeah, that's important.
It is important. Yeah.
A concert or before a show or whatever it is.
Right.
If you don't feel those, then it's almost either you've done it 1,000 times and you're just ready to do it.
Right.
Or you just don't feel anything.
You might not care, or maybe you don't enjoy it as much as maybe you should,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that is definitely a normal thing, and that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
When it becomes a bad thing, my professor at school, what he said, I think it's the simplest way to put it, and probably the easiest to remember, is if your anxiety is interfering with your daily functioning, that is a sign that it's not healthy, or that you should get it addressed.
It's gone above and beyond what it should be doing.
Yes, exactly. It's like anxiety in the movie, where it's like trying too hard.
Yeah.
And it's actually backfiring, right?
Yeah.
So I'm pulling up the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders.
5th edition.
5th edition, yes. So I'm just going to read to you guys some of the official criteria of social anxiety disorder. That's something that I have. And so I'm going to give some of the criteria and then kind of give some examples of my life, especially when I was a kid before I got treatment, of what this looked like in my life.
Yeah.
So the fear or anxiety is out of proportion to the actual threat posed by the social situation. So keep in mind that a lot of these things are not actually measurable. Like you can measure a lot of things in medical science, like there's no number that you can measure it by, but you just know.
Can I give an example?
Yeah.
Of like how this affects me?
Yeah.
And then we, that'll put it into real world terms. I do not like needles or blood or anything like that. Like I'll faint with that type of stuff. I feel awful. I feel queasy. So I have a dentist appointment on Wednesday. And I've got to get Novocaine, and I'm not excited about it at all. It's going to be the worst. That's the anxiety going
Right.
up, right? So the first one you said was that you're thinking essentially worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario, and it's persistent
Mhm.
and extreme. So even there have been many times in my life where the anxiety was so intense that I wasn't thinking in words. So I wasn't always necessarily thinking, okay, well, what if this happens or what if that happens?
Mhm.
I certainly have felt that. But there have been many times where it's just this overwhelming feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it is. Like, just this overwhelming feeling of dread and fear. I'm sweating, my heart is pounding, I'm trembling.
Sometimes it's more emotional than mental.
It's everything. Everything thrown in, you know?
Yeah.
For me personally, when I'm anxious, I don't eat. Some people eat a lot to
Mhm.
cope with it. You know, there's all these different emotional and physical aspects to it.
So when it's to an absurd point, your body is trying to save you from doing something that doesn't need saving.
Exactly. And
Right.
that's when you know that something's not right.
Yeah.
Because again, anxiety is meant to protect you. So growing up, and sometimes today, but again, because I'm getting treated, it's so much better. But as a kid, my brain was telling me, okay, these things are life threatening to you.
Mhm.
And my body would respond in that way.
Yeah.
Flight or fight, or fight or flight.
Mhm.
I was literally ready to fight or run away, to
Mhm.
flee from these things that were totally harmless. You know, I mentioned this in the other episode. One of the social situations that I had a really hard time with was actually youth group. And that was a reason I knew, okay, something isn't right, because I grew up with these people.
Mhm.
The leaders poured into us. They loved us. I'm in contact with many of them today, even though some of them have moved, you know, and many of us can say the same.
Mhm.
And I had such a hard time. I was unable to relax. It was scary to me. And that was an indicator to me that, okay, something isn't right. You know, you shouldn't be feeling anxious at all. And yet you dread going,
Mhm.
you know? And so that was a red flag to me. So, yeah, when it interferes with daily functioning, and yes, okay, youth group is only once a week, but I had school and
Mhm.
other things, and so it literally was a daily thing, you know?
Now, on the back end, I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious. So, when you got home from youth group,
Yeah.
was your mind tricking you into saying that what had happened was out of proportion?
So even from a young age, I knew cognitively that these situations were safe, but my brain could not, it didn't understand.
Yeah.
You know, there was a huge disconnect. And I'm trying to think, there was something I was going to say, and now I forgot it. I forgot. It'll come back to me.
Mhm.
But yeah, like, it didn't make any sense at all. Like, I could always justify why there was no need to be afraid, yet my body could never do it.
Mhm.
It didn't matter how hard I tried. I took care of myself physically, spiritually, and those things didn't help. I was literally doing everything right.
Mhm.
And,
You're running like 5 miles a day.
well, and you know why? Because it helped me breathe.
Oh, yeah.
And I do love to run anyway. I still run
Mhm.
today. But when you're anxious, your breathing tends to be very shallow.
Yeah.
And if your breathing is not right, it throws everything off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right. I would run 5 miles a day, even in the winter, because I could breathe.
It would just regulate
It would regulate me, and I
Yeah.
could not regulate myself any other time.
Also, I've noticed with running, like sometimes, like I use Nike Run Club, so like with the guided run, sometimes it like tells you like, okay, take a moment to look where you're running, like what's around you, like
Yes.
what's where are you running, like what's special about it, what makes you think about it, like what are the feelings that you're feeling in this moment. So like sometimes that centers you and like that brings you back, and it's like, okay, I'm not like, okay, this is good, this is like, where am I running from, like it's just, it makes you think more of like details of the place that you were running,
Exactly.
and
Yep.
it just removes you from everything else.
Exactly. And that actually is a strategy called grounding. I don't know if
Yeah.
like that's necessarily the point of what you're doing, but I do think it's part of it,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you are feeling really anxious or just, even if you're not necessarily anxious, maybe you're just overwhelmed with life and you're just kind of thinking about everything, take a moment to take in your surroundings, like you said, Danny. Take in your surroundings, take a moment to appreciate those things. Make sure that you are involving like all of your senses. Think about things that you can feel, see, touch, smell, all of those things, and that can kind of help ground you and get you out of your own head.
Yeah.
So that's a strategy. But yeah, so when I was a kid, especially, anxiety definitely interfered with my daily functioning to the point where things that I was dreading weeks or months in advance would take over my current thoughts.
Mm.
And the funny thing is most of those events were really not a big deal to begin with. So the anxiety I felt over that event was too much to begin with, so that alone was an issue. But the fact that I could not focus on the present, even when I was doing something fun, that's a sign. That's a sign that the anxiety is excessive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I wanted to actually, first of all, any questions on that?
Well, I want to know what, because we're talking about like a biblical perspective.
Right.
So obviously this is a fallen world.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
And we know that. We know that things aren't perfect.
Right.
What does the Bible say? What does God's word say about anxiety? There's a lot of like, cast your anxieties on him for he
Right.
cares for you. But when I'm about to get stuck with a needle and
Right.
Novocaine, that's not something that someone can say,
And
it's
it
like
fixes
stop being
it.
stop
Yeah.
being anxious. Oh, didn't think about that, you know.
Right. Exactly. So I want to say that do not be afraid and do not be anxious. That is said several times in the Bible, like you said. I think sometimes people read that as a command, and so they criticize people with anxiety. I think it's supposed to be read as an encouragement.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like you said, you can't necessarily just not be anxious.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work like that, especially if you have a clinical disorder. That's why it's a problem, because it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So I encourage you to read those passages as a comfort. And of course, yes, try to work on your anxiety, but also know that if something is really wrong, know that it is not your fault. Know that not being anxious, not being afraid, casting your burdens, that is an encouragement. And it feels impossible sometimes for people with anxiety to do that because we literally cannot. But I'm telling you, once you start getting treatment, my psychiatrist was telling me that once I started getting treatment, I could enjoy God more.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know what that meant at the time because the anxiety was so bad that I could not imagine myself without it. It's funny. My first appointment, she was telling me that, okay, yes, what is likely going on is that you probably have low serotonin levels. And when people start medication, they feel so much better and they're like a different person. And I was sitting there just thinking, she does not know what she's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't even imagine myself without anxiety. I
Like
can't
Ashleigh
imagine.
equals anxiety. It's part of who
it's
you are.
part of me, and I could not imagine myself going through certain situations
Yeah.
and enjoying it.
Mm.
Like, it was impossible because my brain would not allow me to.
Yeah.
And I also want to say, like, looking for help doesn't mean that you're going against what the Bible says and that God is going to look you differently.
Mm,
Yes.
Or like you should be thinking like, oh, I'm going about this the wrong way because the Bible says something different. No, like completely different. Like you should be reaching for help
Mm-hmm.
because it's something that you need.
Yes.
Is
And
you have to take care of yourself.
exactly. I touched on this a little bit on the last episode, just saying that God created us to be a certain way, and when those things are not the way that God created us to be, there are issues. So, yes, I want to talk about how if you have anxiety or depression or whatever it is, how you can get help. And then I also want to talk about if you are a friend of somebody
Mm-hmm.
with anxiety or any kind of mental health problem, how you can be a good support to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I was
Go
just going
ahead.
to say, Danny, to your point, you brought this up last time. Like
Yeah.
when you broke your arm,
yeah,
you sure, you prayed, you read your Bible, you did all
Right.
that stuff,
Exactly.
but you also went to the doctor.
Yeah.
And
Could you imagine if mom and dad were like, "Oh, sorry, I guess you're just gonna have to
Yeah.
read your Bible more.
should have prayed more.
Should have prayed more.
Yeah,
You
you
know,
did-
before you broke your
You
arm.
didn't
It's your
cast
fault."
your physical burdens on him. Yeah.
Right.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the other
So-
thing. God gives us wisdom to be able to like discern if it's something that you have to pray for, if
Yeah.
it's something that needs physical help.
Right.
Mhm, yeah.
Right.
And mental health gets like this stigma
I know.
where it's like,
I
"Ooh,
know. Right.
You deal with that. Ooh."
Yeah.
No, but it's like if something's not right, look to fix it.
Yeah.
And what is the logical, what's the reason for it?
Right.
Are your daily habits
Yeah.
not, creating this, or do you just have a chemical imbalance in your brain?
Right.
Or, do you have external factors?
Right.
But that's what you're going to talk about.
Yes, it is. So, I first want to say, if you are struggling with this, if the things that I have talked about sound kind of like you, I really encourage you to talk to somebody. It can be anyone you trust, anyone you feel comfortable with. It can be a friend, it can be a family member, or if you want to go straight to a professional, that's fine too. Whatever you feel most comfortable with, I really encourage you to do it soon, like as soon as possible. Because once you do that, your life will start to change for the better. So, yes. Okay, so I mentioned that. I'm going to switch to if you're a friend,
Okay.
and then I'm going to go back to if you are that person with
Yep.
anxiety. Okay, so if you are a friend of someone and that person comes to you and they tell you about these things, let's say you don't have experience with this. First of all, you're lucky. That's great. You can still be really helpful though. Don't think that you have to be an expert on this to be helpful. You don't have to have any of the answers. You don't have to know anything, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Listen. Be there. Listen without judgment. Listen without saying, "Oh, well, have you tried this?" Chances are, yes, they have tried it and it didn't work, and that's why they know it's a problem. One thing you can say, sometimes people will say, "Okay, your presence is enough." And sometimes that is true. However, if someone has not gotten help yet, like they need more, right? So here's something that you can say that is helpful, not judgmental, but genuine and helpful. You can say, I don't understand what this is like through experience, but I see you, I hear you, I know it's real, and I want to support you as best as I can. I suggest saying something like that. Well, because it's true.
Yeah.
It's,
And
yeah,
the struggle for a lot of people, including me,
yeah,
is to find that silver lining,
yeah,
right? And I saw this video once that said something along the lines of, if you start your sentence with "at least,"
yes.
don't say it.
Agreed.
Right. So
Mhm.
like, "Oh, well, at least, this isn't happening." Or,
Right.
"Oh, you've got anxiety. Ooh, at least you don't have depression."
Yes.
You're struggling with this. Okay, well, at least,
Right.
you're not annoying to be around.
Right. Or at least what you're afraid of isn't true.
Oh,
Okay. That's the thing. That's why they have a problem.
Yes.
Because they are excessively anxious about something that is not a threat. That is a red flag. So if
Yeah.
you say that, that just doesn't even
Specifically
make any
for
sense.
anxiety, if you say at least you're not going through this, that's just gonna add it. They're gonna start thinking about that as well,
A
and
new
it's just
foe
gonna
has
Oh,
appeared.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's just gonna make it worse.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing is again, the things that are not threats, it's real to them. Like
Yeah.
their body is telling them, "Hey, like this is a deadly situation." So, okay, maybe in theory they're not going through something life-threatening, but they feel like they are.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the problem. But anyway, okay, so and once you start that conversation with your friend, I want to give some practical, I guess, just things that you can do to be helpful. Okay, so you can offer to help research a good doctor or counselor. Maybe you already know somebody and you can refer that person to them. You can offer to go to the appointment with them if that person is comfortable. That can be huge, actually, because I don't know, like sometimes it's just kind of scary to go.
Yeah, sometimes the reason that they might not be looking for help is because they feel scared, or like they are scared to go alone
Yeah.
and they don't want to take that step. So you offering like, hey, if you want me to go with you, or if you want me to get somebody that you feel comfortable going with,
Right.
like that sometimes makes the difference between that person looking for help or keep drowning in in anxiety.
I agree. And for people with depression too, depression is really awful.
Yes.
I've been depressed a couple of times, thankfully for a very short amount of time, but it was the lowest point of my life.
Same here.
Yeah,
I've
it's-
experienced that.
Yeah, it was awful. And you have no desire to do anything. You have no motivation. You have no
Mhm.
drive. Everything in life seems pointless. And it's not laziness.
No.
It's genuine, like, it's an illness.
And a lot of times you don't realize you have it.
Yeah, that's another thing. It takes some time. I didn't think I had it. Mom noticed it way before I did. And I was
Mhm.
like, no, nothing's wrong.
Yeah.
But
For
I
me-
looked back and was like, yeah, there
For
was
me,
something
it took
wrong.
me months to realize
Yeah,
why. Like, it felt like I just was being lazy about
Right.
things and
No
not wanting to do
energy.
things.
yeah.
Or like maybe like I was tired, not sleeping that much. But like it took me months to realize, oh no, like I was not in a good place. I was like,
Right.
this is not normal.
Yeah. Exactly. So I just want to say too, like with people with depression, when they mention that they want help, or if they're just mentioning kind of what they're feeling, if you can help them with some of the action items, same with anxiety, but depression especially, because it's just so hard to do things when you're depressed,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because there's no motivation or anything. Help them research a doctor, help them offer to maybe watch the kids so that they can go to the appointment, you know, just
Or
anything
offer
to help
drive
them,
them to
or
the
drive
appointment.
them. Yeah, like anything practical like that to just make the whole process easier.
Have a
It's
meal with
just-
them so you know that
have a
they
meal
eat.
with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just do practical things like that for them. It's really helpful. And also follow up with specific questions. So let's say you had this conversation, you know, a week ago. Follow up the next time you see them, or text them. You don't have to see them. Follow up with a specific question like, hey, did you find a doctor yet? Or how did your appointment go? Or even better, I found a list of doctors and counselors I think could be a good fit. Here they are. Let me know once you've made an appointment and I will take you. Something like that. Like, be very proactive about it, because
Yeah.
it is so hard for people with anxiety and depression to live their normal lives and do the bare minimum. The bare minimum is so hard. So any support you offer is so helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you are the person with anxiety and depression, know that, first of all, there is, again, like we've said, it is not your fault. God does not see you any differently than anybody else. It is a problem that needs to be fixed or addressed. And by seeing a professional, getting treatment, you are taking care of yourself. You are helping yourself live the way that God intended you to live. It's really hard for you to live well when you're not well yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I may have mentioned this on the last podcast, but one of my professors at school, he would always open up in prayer, and one of the things that he always said was, God, please keep us healthy so that we can glorify you better. Obviously, if you are sick or not well, you can still glorify God, but if there is something that is treatable, you really should take care of it, because it will help you, and it will help you glorify God more. Okay?
Yeah.
So here's what I recommend. My biggest piece of advice once you are seeing a counselor or a doctor is to keep an open mind. A lot of people have an idea of what can help them, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
And please mention those to your doctor. Like, if you
Yeah.
have any ideas of anything that can help, let them know. A lot of Christians are very hesitant about medication. I think because they think it's maybe cheating in some way.
Or not trusting God
Or
enough.
not trusting God enough.
Yeah.
Yes. But again, if it's a chemical issue, it's going to be hard to address it without medication.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it's kind of like saying someone, if you have a friend who's hard of hearing, it's like telling them you need to take your hearing aids out because it's cheating.
Yeah.
No, it's not. You can't hear, so that's why you're wearing it.
Yeah.
Be better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Skill issue.
So my suggestion is just to keep an open mind. Hear what the doctor has to say. Assuming that this doctor is taking in your medical history, your family history, going over. They should be taking blood too, because sometimes it's a nutrition issue,
Okay.
like a vitamin deficiency that can
Huh.
definitely contribute to depression and anxiety. I mean, if it's as simple as that, you're lucky,
Mhm.
right? But yeah, they should be doing labs. They should be
I didn't
going.
think about that. I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't really realize that it could be something about your diet. It could be
Oh,
something
yeah.
about like a lack of vitamins. Because
Mhm.
like, I didn't. You don't think about that because you think, okay, it has to do something with emotions, something
Right.
with
Your
Only
brain.
the brain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But it
Eat
could
healthy. Eat well.
be. Eat well.
Sleep
Get
well.
vitamin D. Go
eat
outside.
Chick-fil-A.
That is blessed. It is
Yeah.
blessed food certified.
Is the chicken of the Lord.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yes. Okay. So if you are hesitant about taking medication, and your doctor, after reviewing everything, says that it is likely a chemical issue, I understand being hesitant about it. I strongly encourage you to consider it. Strongly encourage you to consider it. Because it is going to be really difficult to address a chemical imbalance without medication. And I am speaking from experience. Again, I did everything right and nothing helped.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I needed medication. And if that's the case for you, that is okay. There are so many conditions that require medication.
Yeah.
And people don't think twice about it because it is helping them function the way that you were created to function.
It's the same thing when you have a flu. You cannot just not take your medication and just think that it's gonna go away.
Yeah.
Like there's a certain point where you have to be and take the wisdom that God has given you to be able
Right.
to say like, okay, no, this is not something I can fix on my own.
Right.
I need help either from medication or from other people.
And that's just
Yes.
life in general.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's so much that we can't do on our own,
Yeah.
and God is here for us.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And He's placed things in our lives and in this world to help us.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
we should use them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Asking for help doesn't mean your faith is less or like your relationship with God is less because you had to look for somebody else for help.
yes.
That's a sign of strong faith.
Yeah.
Is being able to say, yeah, God, I can't do it because, I'm a messed up human being. I need you.
Right. Exactly. And you know what? That help can come in the form of doctors, counselors, all sorts of different treatments.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a good prayer for either your friend or yourself, if you're the person who is struggling, is to pray for wisdom so that you can see what the best plan is for healing, and pray for accountability, pray for the strength to continue when it's hard, because it will be hard. I mean, it's already hard, right?
Yeah.
So one of my most commonly prayed prayers was just for strength to get through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Wisdom, like you were saying.
wisdom, strength,
Wisdom for doctors, for your friends,
exactly.
for yourself, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
For the people close to you around you, because that's also, or even, hey, if you're somebody that is dealing with somebody that has this issues, prayers for you as well, because that's something that is not hard to like deal with. Somebody that has this issues, so prayers for you so that you can be strong
Mm-hmm.
and for you to have wisdom to be able to help them in the right way.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the encouraging thing at the end of this is when you allow God to help you through this, then you learn to trust Him so much more.
I agree.
And you see His goodness and His kindness and His
Yeah.
mercy.
I agree.
Yeah.
When I was a kid and teenager especially, it was like every day I made it.
Mm-hmm.
I survived every single day because God was with me. And that is the truth. That is seriously how I thought of it. And I still, to this day, think of it like that, too.
Yeah.
Even though I'm doing better. Like, I could not have done it without Him. Could not.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think that's a good place to wrap up.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you so much for all of your wisdom.
Of course.
Everything that you bring is amazing.
Thank you.
We definitely want to have you again because
Yeah.
I enjoy having this conversations, this
Mhm.
topics, because there's some topics that we need to like bring out to the light a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it helps having a trained professional.
Oh
'Cause
yes,
we can blab on about it all we want.
but we can say something that's not supposed to be
can-
said.
we can say things that will lead you into darkness,
Yes.
not purposely. So Yeah, glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
I look forward to the next time.
Of course.
For
of course.
sure.
Yeah.
And again, if you guys have another topic specifically within mental illness or anything like that,
Any
that you wanna
psychological
Yeah.
like topics,
Yeah,
any topics with psychology that you want to go over, see
Yeah.
how that relates to your daily walk with Jesus, please, 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 we encourage you to comment them so that we actually know what our audience is going through, so that we can know what is it that you guys need or want to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Reach to that 800 followers by the sign. No, no, don't call because we don't have a number.
Yeah.
But
Followers by that won't even be a number because that's
No.
too many letters. Podcast.
no,
That could work.
that's too many letters.
Yep. Call 1-800-podcast.
Nope.
We'll be there.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
No, thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah. And if you haven't seen Ashleigh's episode about mental health, go watch it because it's a really good one as well.
Mm-hmm.
Peace.
And lastly, shameless plug.
Merch.
We got merch. Whenever I show the merch, I move 2 inches, and then you can't see it. So we've got merch, shirts, hats, embroidery coming soon, sweatshirts, sweatpants. It's a really great way to help us get higher quality videos out to you.
And to be able to support us on what we do so that we can bring out the best content that we can, the best topics, and the best people.
Exactly. Yep. All right. Well, have a lovely day.
See you in the next time.